Welcome to another episode of the Modern Facilities Management Podcast, brought to you by FlowPath. I'm your host, Griffin Hamilton. This is the show where I interview industry experts who share their stories, strategies, and insights into modern-day facilities management. From hospitality to commercial real estate and everything in between, we'll learn what it really takes to succeed as a facilities manager. Welcome to another episode of the Modern Facilities Management Podcast. Today, Tate Putnam joins. Tate, how you doing?
Doing great.
Well, thanks for coming on the show here this morning, and glad that we're able to finally connect and hit the record button here. But before we get into the main content, talking about what you're doing and how you're leveraging technology to manage your preventative maintenance program there. But before we get into that, why don't you tell the audience a little bit more about who you are and what it is you do?
Sure. Tate Putnam. I am with Reedy Rides. We're a bicycle shop and bicycle rental shop in the upstate of South Carolina, in Greenville, South Carolina.
So people might think of a bicycle shop and be like, what the heck is he doing on the Modern Facilities Management Podcast? There's no facility there. But they'd be wrong. So yeah. I guess give a little bit more context on how bicycle rentals would tie into facilities and what facilities you're managing there.
Sure. And I guess I would start this by saying that somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 or 8 years ago, I would not have said that this was where I'd end up in a place talking about facilities management from a bike shop. But I used to work in, I've been involved with technology since I was just looking at it the other day. I had my first computer when I was, I think I was 6 years old.
Wow.
And that goes way back, right? That goes to late 70s. And
hey, no need to date yourself here.
Exactly. But I had my first computer, and that led to just playing with them all the time. And then once I just about started college, I had a relative that started a relational database company called Ashton Tate. And working with databases, which ties in almost immediately to what a facilities management piece of software might do, I ended up out of school loving, I was a bicycle racer and loved technology. And my first job out of school was with a company that had a CMMS piece of software called MP2. It's not a significant name, but it's changed owners over the years, and now it's an asset management piece of software. And all of those pieces of software have been very interesting to me. Whether you're a mom and pop gas station store or a large facility, being able to have access to that data is really important. And my background is such that I love data. I love being able to see what's going on. But right out of school, I was working in that technology space. And so I was able, as a tech support and project manager at that company, I worked with a lot of facilities, a lot of different operations. And as much as they're very different, from the small ones up to a cigarette production plant in St. Petersburg, Russia, they all have a lot of similarities. What I didn't know is just how similar it would be when I got to Reedy Rides. I thought, I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to get out of the corporate world. I'm going to stop doing this technology thing. And I'm going to open a bike shop. I've always been a cyclist, and it was always fantastic. But interestingly, within just the first few months, one of the bike shares in the country, Spin, which is a company that's now been purchased by Tier, and then B-Cycle in Greenville, immediately I started noticing that these aren't just bikes, they're bikes with technology built into them. And especially bikes that roll around outside in the public, you really have to do a lot to make sure that they're safe and functioning properly. And they're very mobile. So immediately I went right back into a maintenance and management world, where not only are the bikes that I have for my rental shop needing to be maintained and taken care of, but the bikes that are out there in the public space do too. And for me, it became just about the perfect mix of technology, which I'd loved since I was a child and worked with in a professional way, and bicycles. And I have been surprised continually throughout the last, say, 5 years with just how much my fundamental, basic first jobs that are related to facilities and maintenance management tie into what we do almost every single day.
Yeah, that is really interesting. And you bring up a good point of the difference in your experience, the different types of facilities that you're working with and the similarities there. And not many people know this, but that was actually one of the reasons why the podcast started was I saw these different industries within facilities management that there's so much overlap, yet there was no inner industry communication and sharing best practices. And it's like, I understand that maybe your asset at a restaurant is, going to be similar on paper, to a K-12 asset. Like, why don't you talk through how you're doing something in your world versus how, that other industry is doing, and share how you look at the different processes you have in place. And so interesting that you brought that up and you recognize that from the get-go of just the similarities and between them, and then tying that to what you're doing right now, which seems like the perfect, you came up with your dream job, basically tying in your hobby of cycling to technology to facilities management in your career. That's incredible.
Yeah, I really did. And it's one of the things that I think is interesting is it's very easy to have an idea like this bike share thing that started up not too many years ago, the scooter share. It's very easy to throw some investment money into a pile and get a bunch of these things rolling around. But it is quite a different one to make those things successful. Mm-hmm. In my work with B-Cycle, which is from bicycles to now e-bikes, those guys have done a pretty good job of making available to anybody working with those bicycles a system that lets you track what's going on with them. Mm-hmm. In some other spaces that I've worked in, and my initial experience with scooter share, it was a secondary thought. And it's the worst thing to have as a secondary thought. You go from 500 scooters rolling out of the back of an 18-wheeler, ready to go land on the street. And very exciting. Everybody's excited about launch day, right? This could apply to opening day at a facility or anything, right? You have the first products rolling off of a production line. But that excitement fades real quick when within 24 hours, you have lots of things you have to do to keep this thing moving. And that's about visibility. What do you have and how do you work on it? And none of that's new to your audience, facilities management. But I do think that it deserves attention no matter how small or different your type of business is. What are you doing on day one? And then what's the very next thing you have to worry about? In our case, it was charging batteries. It was fixing broken anything, right? All of these things are moving around and then they break. So I found that being able to capture very easily and quickly what's going on in this mobile fleet is a real challenge. And we found lots of ways to do it. We've seen lots of examples where it didn't work. I was in a warehouse in Los Angeles where we kept some of our scooters. It was a huge facility, thousands of scooters. And they launched those things without a good maintenance plan.
Right.
And so when I got involved in that particular operation, I think that we were looking at, we'd go into a room that I called the crying room. And it was 1,000 scooters beeping and squawking and crying. I called it the crying room because they were crying, and pretty quickly I wanted to cry. But it's just a quick, hard lesson in what not to do and how quickly these things can get away from you. It's not a fun thing to get through, but once you are, finding that quick way to capture what's going on. Simple, make it simple. If it's a piece of paper, do it on a piece of paper. If you think that you need 30 categories, decide that you're going to start with 3 and try to avoid the other category because everything goes into that.
Right. Yeah, it's just laying that foundation. You have to start somewhere, and having, to your point, having that visibility it's critical. And I find it interesting that it was exciting on launch day, and very quickly there were those issues. And that goes into you're in fighting fire. Like, that is the mode that you're in, and no one likes to live that way. No one is sitting back thinking, all right, I've got more than enough money in my budget and I've got more than enough headcount. I'm solid. No one listening is saying that. And so I think that's something where switching that mindset from, okay, we have the crying room, to, all right, how do we fix this now, but make sure the crying room is minimized as much as possible. And how did you go about that and standardizing processes to be proactive there to eliminate those fires?
Yeah. The biggest thing I would say, and this moves a little bit more forward in my career to sort of a more recently with B-Cycle. Those guys have always had this ability for us to sort of log the kinds of problems that we have with bicycles and get them fixed. But it's really that quick visibility and making it very easy. You see something, you click a button or two, and it gets into a queue so that we can address it. The people in facilities management know, you tell me what to go fix, I can fix it. And many times, most of the time, the people that are responsible also know what is likely to stop working sooner rather than later. Mm-hmm. And I would say that one of the things that's really important, it's not the fun discussion to have, but you've got to talk about what's next. So be involved early and think about what we do. So one of the things we've tried to really focus on with my current operation is a very easy way. And we use a combination of simple pieces of paper, tags really, where we're able to very quickly identify something that's broken. It's going to be outside and broken. We roll it inside, it's inside and broken. And then it's with 200 other things that are broken or needing some attention. And being able to quickly do that, empower every employee in the organization to raise their hand and say, something's going wrong here. It's a safety issue and it's a money issue. And I always tell people that as much as I love technology doesn't solve all these problems. So keep it simple. If it's a piece of paper and a spreadsheet, that works too. Obviously, pretty quickly, having a better, more sophisticated system actually gets you out of that I think mode and into what you know.
Right.
And they're almost always different. I'm very confident what I know and what I don't know, but man, I am often wrong unless I'm looking at the data and can validate it.
Yep.
And it really is that first key. So I love to have 15 different data points on everything out there, but don't try to boil the ocean. Start simple. Just that flag that says this thing needs attention is usually enough to get the right people looking at it and solving that next problem. When they're working on solving those problems, what do you need to do? Do you have the tools available to do it? And we've enjoyed working with technology to really provide those things. And I've worked with probably several different facilities or maintenance management or asset management packages, and lots of commonalities and lots of things that show you, that can sort of bog you down. And the ones that are flexible, that give you multiple ways to sort of interact with the system, are the ones that I have found to be most effective, especially in these mobile fleets. If you have a fixed asset, you can go look at it. When you have a mobile fleet, you can go look at it, but you really have to have a plan to go look at it. Mm-hmm. And not only do you have to have a plan to go look at it, you don't want to waste too much time doing that. So are you set up and in a position where you have a good feel for what's going on in the field and how to most effectively take care of issues there?
Yeah, it's always interesting to talk through the wasted time that a lot of maintenance technicians have. And I've seen stats out there where up to a quarter of their time is spent wandering around the facility or their territory, similar to sales reps back in the day, the old traveling salesman paradigm, where you have to, you want to be more efficient with your time and knock as many doors out, or in this case with maintenance, be able to resolve as many issues. But you got to have a plan. You got to go know where you're going and being very intentional with that. And it's kind of hard to just shrug your shoulders and I'll go this way and hope it works. It's like, no, let's be intentional. Let's have a plan. Let's start thinking ahead. You bring up the differences between mobile and fixed assets. Beyond that, like, what else have you seen on the different side of this where it's a little bit more challenging, or maybe on the flip side of that, maybe a little bit easier than fixed assets?
Yeah, the nice thing about a non-fixed asset, especially one that's not very high value, I guess that's all relative. If I have a bicycle that's $500 but 10 now becomes $5,000, 100, the math and the spreadsheet,
right.
See how valuable these assets are, and yet you still need to be able to quickly work on them. So the Mobile assets in this case, especially ones that literally roll around, really it gives you as a manager of those assets multiple options, right? Do we fix it in the field where the asset is? Yes. Do we bring them back to the shop and fix them? Yes. And it really depends on, you can actually then use that lever of what's our staffing like? What's our vehicle access like? What is the relationship between where we are and where these assets are? And we oftentimes will look at that and mix up where we work on them to be most efficient. There are times of the year and times of even just weekly where it makes most sense to grab that toolbox and get out in the field and do things there. That's where that categorization of what you're dealing with is most important. And again, I'm not saying 30 categories. You may have twice that many, or ideally you have fewer than that. But I like to say that you really want categories that inform what you need to do next at a minimal level. Is it grabbing toolbox A or B? Is it spare parts? What is it? But build your categories around what you can easily package and get out into the field. And even if you're bringing them back into to a facility to work on them, the same problems apply. The mobile assets are, I think that they're easier, unless it's a wheel that's not working. And then all of a sudden, a bicycle, the easiest thing in the world, is the worst thing, right? A bicycle without a wheel or a kickstand, all of a sudden becomes a mess. And those are the simple things that seem like, oh, well, it's just another asset. But, I can stack, 10 bicycles in a small, or probably 20 in a car parking space, unless there's a broken kickstand or no wheel on it. And then I can do 4. So it's a simple organization task. It's a simple understanding. And by building those categories early on about what types of work you need to do, really help dramatically in informing that next step, both in building your maintenance organization as well as scheduling them.
Yeah, and I guess on that, I've often talked about the differences between inspections, where you're just making sure you're inspecting the asset to make sure it's good to go, versus preventative maintenance, and that's the actual preventative maintenance on that. Is that something where you differentiate with mobile assets?
Yeah, we do what we would with mobile assets, especially high touch assets like a bicycle or a scooter or something like that. What we find is that there's a preventative maintenance schedule that we use on all of these items, and that really is nice in terms of sort of building that baseline of what we're going to do all the time. What we're going to do to help us, because the broken asset in the field is not earning us any money. All of those one-offs that we have to go out and figure out and fix, it really is just it's a waste of time. We can't avoid that, but we want to minimize that.
Right.
And so we do look at, because it's high touch, we do a basic field. It's almost like a visual touch inspection at every single item every day. And it's a checkbox, right? So you train people on what are the 5 items you have to look at when you touch that battery. And what is the simplest way to get that information into our system so that we can organize? If you have 10 of those, it's not that hard. What we manage right now at Reedy Rides, between our fleet and the others that we manage, is probably close to 400 assets, rolling assets. And that's a lot. And they're generally the same asset, but they all have some of their unique aspects to them. And it can get overwhelming pretty quick. But I think that with the combining that preventative maintenance schedule as well as what I'm going to call a mini inspection every day, you really are, the main thing that becomes important there is that the speed and ease with which you can log issues with those items.
Yeah, and I think especially in your case where you have assets that the consumer, the customer, is actually writing. Safety is top of the list there, where you've got to make sure those little things, one, make for a safe ride, but 2, that customer experience is top notch, so they keep returning.
That's right.
And so those are the little things here and there that you have to make sure that you're taking care of, and documenting that and standardizing those processes across your team, because that's where trouble can arise.
That safety issue, I mean, customer satisfaction is important, and safety those are the top 2. We want to have a safe vehicle that somebody's operating, And then presuming that they have that, then it needs to be in good shape so that they want to come back. These vehicles being down are a different type of problem than an HVAC system being down, but it doesn't change that there is a impact to your organization as soon as it happens. We know with our assets that they are all going to have problems on a regular basis. And when I say problems, it's that preventative maintenance schedule of tires, being able to know that at the next inspection we need to change all of the, tiny batteries in the system. There's so many little pieces, and knowing that that's coming up is where that preventative maintenance and that attention to the detail of what these assets really are becomes so important.
What's one thing that you know now that you wish you would have known 5 years ago?
5 years. Let's see. I think I would have liked to have known. We run through this life in this world of thinking, well, we got it fixed and now it's good. And I think I really would have liked to have known just how valuable that 5-point touch is when you're near the asset. It's not a meter that you can read or that can send you a signal. We can get some of that stuff, but it's really paying attention earlier. I talked about the crying room.
Yeah.
I fall into the same trap of getting excited about the balloons and the fanfare of a launch day, and it's wonderful. But I think that going back, what I would do is, and I have done this, is focus people on day 2. Day 1 is really, if you're organized, it's not hard to open the doors and turn on the machines or start riding bicycles. But it's day 2. It's day 2 through 7. That first week of really being prepared for the inevitable. And I guess I get back to it, it would be that it will go wrong. Things will go wrong. Things are going to break almost immediately. And people are very forgiving at that time, which is great. So from a customer sat standpoint, I understand. But not being prepared, sort of behind the scenes to take that, I get it, I understand. Because after the first day or the 5th day, now it's a customer sat issue. They're no longer satisfied. So it's really focusing on days past the first week, let's focus there and see, make sure that we're ready. Stacks of spare parts, things in the system, SOPs to how to do this. Not complicated, not overly involved, but just enough that you don't get tripped up on day 8.
Right. Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. And, that's the first time I've asked that question. And I like it there where you could look back and like, God, I messed up and I learned from it and I adapted. And now that's part of my process. I've standardized things, but when I first started day 1, I wish I would have known that. And that's the whole point, right? Where we are evolving as an industry and you have to take in, all right, here's where I failed. How could I reduce that or eliminate the risk of that happening again? Or how could I be more efficient with my time? And those are things where it's just like, yep, that is burned in my mind of that was an epic failure. I don't want to do it again. It was terrible. Let's make sure I could, dot my I's and cross my T's where it's not going to happen. So love that. And
everybody's excited on day 1. There's a long list of things that even if it's not your job to say, very simple things, put more paper in the printer. I mean, anybody can do that. And so you don't have to worry about those things, right? Mm-hmm. Good energy with the people you're working with are going to solve lots of those problems. Yeah. So as a maintenance professional and somebody that knows the industry, what I need to do and what I found myself needing to do more and more of is prep for when everybody's gone, when the easy things aren't there anymore, and learn from previous launches or opening days. Learn what those gotchas are going to be. And again, not the ones that just about anybody can go and do as a favor or as we're jumping in and making things happen. But those things that everybody has a story about what they got caught with and what was not good. Learn from those. Make that part of your preventative maintenance program moving forward. It's not what I called it, but it's essentially what I did. Every launch needed a preventative maintenance schedule that said, you're going to run into these things. Make sure you have these tool sets ready to go, get to town earlier, whatever it is, to be prepared for those things that you learn at each launch. And because we're looking at hundreds, if not thousands of mobile assets, I could look at this and talk about the most difficult, how much of a pain it is. But the reality is that you go to school real quick when you have 1,000 units of something.
Yeah.
And even if it's a brand new, and be prepared to go to school every time and learn what it is that you're going to see next time. And that is something that, I know bicycles, I know scooters, I know a lot of these things. I feel confident in that, but I don't know every model. I don't know everything about them, and there's always something new. And that's what I would take away every single time, is being additionally prepared for those things that are going to come up. And by having a way of capturing it early on, super simple, easy, fast way to capture it, I don't have to spend weeks learning, doing a debrief. I'll know it immediately.
Yeah.
And you want to be able to see those things as they pop up.
Yeah, absolutely love that. And I do have one last question I ask everybody who comes on the show, and that is, who or what has had the biggest impact on you and your career?
Yeah, I think there have been two people that have had a huge impact on me. One is a gentleman named Jim Sexton, who was an airline pilot, and he really taught me a lot about focusing on partnering with the people that you're with and how you operate. So you're either an individual, if you're a maintenance, as a maintenance professional, you've got to come in and partner with multiple people in an organization. And Jim was a great mentor in learning how to do that. And then the other side of this, which is a little different, but it's our VP of sales at DataStream, where I worked there years ago. His name's John Sterling, and he is a salesman. But one of the things he always talked about was being the absolute best at what you're doing when you're doing it. So if I'm doing a launch, or I'm directing a launch, or I'm a facilities maintenance guy, I've got to really focus on that and find ways to be excellent there. Even if I have dreams of bigger, different things, be the absolute best at what you can be when it's time to be there. If that's what you're called to do, be the best at it.
I love that. No, that is great, because I think we all are guilty of this. We're trying to do a million different things, and we all know you can't multitask and do it each and every item or task as best as you can. You're just kind of half-assing a bunch of different items, and that's something where I love that. Just live in the moment, and whatever you're tasked to do it to the best of your abilities. Well, Tate, once again, thanks for coming on the podcast. This has been great. Love picking your brain about what you guys are doing, and differences between fixed and mobile assets there, and your style and your strategies there. But once again, thank you so much, and be good.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Modern Facilities Management Podcast. Make sure to subscribe for future episodes, and follow us on LinkedIn for more facilities management content.